Hey folks, this is Rhykker with a Diablo 3 Season 13 Necromancer build guide. This guide is an update to my Season 12 Pestilence build guide, so in this video we're going to update you on the absolute best skills, stats, and gear, and we're also going to cover a speed variant of this build for blitzing through T13 rifts. I know a lot of people don't like the playstyle of the Pestilence Corpse Lance build, but for blitzing through T13, it is super fun. Now let's take a look at the skills and the gear that you want, and we're going to assume that you've already watched my previous video on this, so if we cover anything too briefly here, feel free to check out the old video for a deeper explanation. For this build, you need the full 6-piece bonus of the Pestilence set, and we're going to use this to launch Corpse Lances all over the screen. We ideally want to combine this with the power of the Compass Rose and the Traveler's Pledge. This set gives us a lot of toughness while we're moving around, and a lot of damage while we're standing still, which plays perfectly into the playstyle of this build. This build revolves around 10-second damage windows. Outside of those 10 seconds, you're not dealing damage, you're running around hurting enemies, so that's when you're mobile, that's when you want toughness. And then you're going to stand still to deal your damage, to throw out your Corpse Lance barrage, and that's when this set gives us our damage. For our belt, we want Dainty's Binding. This gives us more toughness. We're going to want to always be cursing enemies. For our weapon, we want Trag'Oul's Corroded Fang. We won't be using Grim Scythe, but we do want to deal more damage to cursed enemies, and that part of the effect still applies even if we don't have Grim Scythe. Our offhand item won't matter. It's going to be the stats on the item that matter, so you're going to get whichever Necromancer phylactery you can get that will roll with the right stats, which we'll highlight in a little bit. Similarly, the Bracer also isn't too important. However, Nemesis Bracers tend to be the best here. These let us spawn more elite packs, and this build is an elite hunter. That said, you can also go with Lakuni Prowlers to squeeze in an extra stat, or if you haven't gotten good Nemesis Bracers yet, you can use any Bracers. Next, you need to have a Crisbin Sentence to deal a lot more damage to enemies that you're going to slow with one of your powers. In our cube, we need a Rylina's Shadow Hook to absolutely maximize our damage. That's why we're also going to want to be stacking as much essence as possible. We need the Corpse Whisper Pauldrons to make our Corpse Lances deal as much damage as possible. And we're going to throw in a Convention of Elements for even more damage. Onto our skills. Our main damage dealer here will be Corpse Lance, Brittle Touch. If you want to push the highest grade rifts possible, the Cold rune here is going to be the one you want to go with. We'll actually be using the Poison rune in our speed variant. We want to combine this with Land of the Dead Frozen Lands. This gives us our 10-second damage window. The entirety of this build revolves around waiting for our next Land of the Dead window in order to spam the crap out of Corpse Lance. We're combining that with Simulacrum Reservoir. This is going to double our essence, and as we said, more essence, more damage. When you're ready to open your damage window, you're going to start by popping Simulacrum, then Land of the Dead, and then open fire with Corpse Lance. We're going to work in Decrepify Borrowed Time. We always want to make sure that enemies around us are cursed. And this rune will give us more cooldown reduction. More cooldown reduction means less time to wait for our next Land of the Dead damage window. Next, we're going to want Devour Satiated. You're also going to be spamming this during your Land of the Dead window. This affects stacks, and it's going to build up to giving you a big health boost over a long period of time. Then lastly, we want Blood Rush Molting. Mobility is very important, and we need Molting because we need to be able to leave a corpse in order to break doors. That's one issue with this build. You can't open doors, you got no generating attack, you got no attack beyond Corpse Lance. So in order to bust open a door, you Blood Rush to leave a corpse, and then fire off a Corpse Lance to break it open. For our passives, we want Overwhelming Essence to give us more essence and thus more damage. We want Stand Alone to gain more armor and thus more toughness. We want Final Service as an extra life. And we want Blood as Power for more cooldown reduction. Now let's quickly go over what stats you want on every piece of gear. I'll drop a D3 planner link in the description below to show you every piece of gear and its optimum stats. That's what I'll be listing off right now as I mouse over my less than optimal gear. But despite this, and despite having no augments basically, clearing greater rifts in the 90s is a breeze, and with practice and augments and Paragon you can push a lot higher. The world's greatest necromancers have used this build to push up to greater rift 122. For your shoulders you want intelligence, vitality, cooldown reduction, Corpse Lance damage. As a general note on secondary properties, try to squeeze in a secondary resistance wherever you can, or pickup radius, or health globe bonus. For your helm, you want intelligence, vitality, then you can go with crit chance, but you can also go with life percent. Because we're using brittle touch, and if we're pushing high greater rifts, we're going to quickly build up a lot of critical hit chance, which makes having critical hit chance on your gear not really necessary. So wherever you'd like to, you can sacrifice critical hit chance on your gear in order to gain more toughness. For your Traveler's Pledge, you'll want cold damage, critical hit damage, then either intelligence or raw damage. In general, you always want intelligence on your gear, but as you get higher Paragon, as you get more augments, you're getting more intelligence naturally, and then you can afford to sub intelligence for other stats. For your gloves, intelligence, attack speed, crit damage, cooldown reduction. For your chest, intelligence, vitality, corpse lance damage. For your bracers, cold damage, intelligence, vitality, life per hit. For your belt, intelligence, vitality, life percent, armor. For your pants, intelligence, vitality, armor. For your boots, intelligence, vitality, armor, life regen. For your legendary ring, you're going to want to either cube a Crispin Sentence or a Convention of Elements. Just use on your character whichever you have a better version of. And the ideal stats you'll want will be intelligence, attack speed, crit damage. For your compass rose, you want damage, intelligence, attack speed, crit damage. For your weapon, you want cooldown reduction, attack speed, and then either percent damage or intelligence. And very important as a secondary, plus max essence. Again, more essence is more damage. Then for your offhand, cooldown reduction, corpse lance damage, max essence, and then if you want, you can get crit chance or you can get vitality instead. For your legendary gems, you want a Bane of the Trapped. You want a Zay's Stone of Vengeance. Both of those give you more damage. With your Zays, you want to keep your distance. More distance means more damage. And you want a Molten Wildebeest Gizzard for more survivability. Now we're just going to have a very quick talk about attack speed breakpoints. If you've exactly followed all the stats to get on every piece of gear, and you've maxed out your attack speed in Paragon points, then you don't have to worry about breakpoints at all. If you follow this exactly, you will have 1.72 attacks per second. As you can see, I don't. I'm missing a bit of attack speed, and that's actually a costly mistake. So again, without getting into the complexities here, if you want to have more attack speed than 1.72 attacks per second, do be aware that this does not benefit you unless you reach 2 attacks per second or higher. Basically, there's no effective difference between having 1.72 attacks per second and 1.9 attacks per second. It's only at 2 attacks per second that you gain a benefit. So if you get a new piece of gear with attack speed and it doesn't bring you all the way to 2 attacks per second, then it's not worth having attack speed on it at all. Similarly, if you have less than 1.72, as I do, you can go as far down as 1.5 attacks per second without it affecting you negatively. Your breakpoints are 1.5, 1.72, and 2. To show you how much this is costing me, I could afford to lose attack speed on my ring, which I could have crit damage instead, and I drop down to 1.6. I can go even lower. I could take attack speed off my gloves and drop down to 1.52. I probably cannot lose any more attack speed at this point, but that's 2 slots where I have attack speed that's doing nothing for me. I'll be better suited having something else roll on those slots instead of attack speed. Now on the other hand, if I gain another piece of gear with attack speed, it's going to take me all the way to 1.78. Now I have a little bit too much attack speed. So ideally I have the right number of items with attack speed, but if you'll notice, 6% attack speed, 6% attack speed, and 6% attack speed. Because I don't have my max rolls, I'm not quite hitting 1.72. Alright, now we'll quickly cover the speed version of this build. For T13, we don't need the added toughness that the Compass Rose and the Traveler's Pledge give us, so we're going to go with the Johnstone as our amulet. This will give us more damage. Instead of the Compass Rose, we'll be taking an Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac. This will give us huge damage reduction on our Land of the Dead window. We don't need the toughness that Dainties gives us, so we're going to go with a Vigilante Belt for more cooldown reduction. We're going to work in Stuart's Greaves for more movement speed after blood rushing. And because we're losing a piece of Pestilence, we need to work in a Ring of Royal Grandeur, which we're going to do in our cube. And we're going to swap out the less reliable damage of the Convention of Elements. In a speed build, we don't want to be relying on damage windows. We will want to have the lost time for even more movement speed. We need to have an Ingum for that cooldown reduction. We're still hunting for elites with this build, but with all of the cooldown we're working in, we should be able to pop our Land of the Dead every single time we reach an elite pack. For our weapon in the cube, we can work in Nair's Black Death. This gives us a lot more damage, and we are turning this into a poison build. For our skills, we're swapping to Ricochet, on our corpse lands. This will help us not just kill elites, but all the trash around them as well. We're going to use Bone Armor Dislocation to give us more armor, but also as a source of poison damage for Nair's Black Death. We're going to swap to the Cannibalize rune on Devour. We now want to gain health back rather than have more health, because we're going to be losing our health regen from the Molten Wildebeest Gizzard. And then we're working in Bone Spear Blighted Marrow. This is another source of poison damage in order to combine with our Nair's Black Death, but this is also what will trigger our Obsidian Ring of the Zodiac, and we're going to spam this in order to reduce the cooldown on Land of the Dead. For our passives, we're swapping out Overwhelming Essence for Fueled by Death for more movement speed. For our gems, we're swapping out that Molten Wildebeest for the Gogok of Swiftness. This gives us everything that we want: cooldown reduction, attack speed, and as a bonus, some dodge chance. Now, because we're not using Brittle Touch in this variant, you want to work critical hit chance back into the build. As is normal in basically any Diablo build, we'll have the full stats that you want down in the description below. And that's going to wrap up this guide. Thanks for watching. Special thanks to my Twitch and Patreon supporters for making these videos possible. If you like what you see on this channel and want to support the creation of more content, you can pledge on Patreon, where we offer backer rewards, and your support is immensely appreciated. If you enjoyed this video, please share it, check out these other videos, and subscribe to join Rhykker's Raiders for more Diablo content.